Did you see Naruto's transformation jutsu? It was so pitiful. The boys laughed like they always did, like you could have done any better. And there was Naruto, right on time. Sweat dripped down your forehead, but your mood changed a few seconds later. He might be a bad student, and a little pain in the ass sometimes, but you truly felt bad for Naruto. People treated him as crummy as a person could get treated, and anyone could see that if they looked into his sad blue eyes. The redness may be small, but it always hurt you to know that it meant he'd been crying a few hours before. Kiba was the worst of them, though. They used to be friends, and they used to hang out, and even if it were bad things like skipping class, they were friends nevertheless. You still hadn't understood why Kiba ceased being friends with him. Sure, everyone else thought he was sad and lonely, but the truth of it was because he was. Actually, you take that back. You're probably the worst of them all. Knowing all these things and yet never actually making an effort to become Naruto's friend. You tried today, though. You didn't know what to expect. You were kind of numb with these types of things, making friends and all. Yeah, you had people you would talk to during class, but outside the academy, you rarely left your house. I guess you could say you were kind of a loner yourself, but that isn't to say you minded being alone. Solace was comforting to you. You enjoyed the quiet. It was your best friend. You remember waking up. You remember walking into the kitchen and eating breakfast. You remember opening your front door and walking to school. You remember the fall of the snow and how it felt when it hit your head. You remember how the air smelled. You coming across that sad, lonely boy in the woods. You remember how you reached out to him, how your heart ached to pull him close and console those sad eyes back into the bright, bold ones you saw at school. You remember pulling back and frowning at yourself for doing so. You remember watching the boy fade into the white wooded wonderland. You remember feeling guilt and remorse. But most of all, you remember the other boy, the one that approached you with his dog, and the strangest way his eyes looked like two planets, full of regret, despair, and misery. It hurts, right? You remember this fact clearly. You'd never seen Kiba look so much in pain. You'd stared at him in awe, but he never once looked at you. He only watched the space in between the trees where Naruto had walked off. Then your mouth formed a small, sad smile, and you mumbled the words, "I really am the worst." You remember so much from that morning. So much knowledge was forced into your small brain, and from then on, Kiba was always in your sights. Even when you preferred him to be elsewhere, you never did end up talking to Naruto. That was the hardest thing to remember. Days passed, weeks, and months. Before you knew it, you were older, more mature, more mindful. It was like a wave of nostalgia hit you when you saw those sad blue eyes again, but even worse this time around because of who they were crying for. Then you saw him. That first morning you'd seen a different side of him, one to contradict the familiar one at the academy. And you didn't know how to describe what you felt at the time because you didn't think it mattered, and it really didn't. But the more you thought about the interaction you had with Kiba, the more you developed somewhat of an understanding. You didn't agree with his choice, be that as it may, an understanding even so. Oyen, Kiba called you over. He was sitting on a log with Hinata and Akamaru. You smiled and walked over to them. Naruto was done mourning, and so are you. Then Naruto burst out from the hut and ran over to you for the millionth time that day. It's just not fair, he shouted. I know it's not fair. You sighed, contemplating the route to go, the one that would make it all better, or the one where you explained to him that things always happen for a reason. But Sasuke popped out of nowhere and chose for you, hitting Naruto on the head with the small karate chop. It's ramen, Naruto. Get over it. Easy for you to say, you cold-hearted monster. He mumbled the last part, but Sasuke definitely heard it and retorted back, You're one to talk. They started bickering, as always. Everyone else got involved, someone shoving their own opinion into the mix. Hinata was the only reserved one, and it made you love your friendship with her even more. Hey, it's my family's ramen shop, so be quiet. Everyone shut their mouths. Jesus, you'd think someone died. Kiba side-eyed you for a second, before smiling to himself. You're one to talk. And what's that supposed to mean? You watched him with a red face. Sakura nodded her head in agreement. You were left wondering how and when she got there. Kiba's right for once, Mayan. I saw you crying by the river earlier today. Your eyes got teary once more. That's different. What? How? Naruto gasped, having a fake stroke. You turned your head in ignorance. Shut up. Kiba laughed, patting your head. It's fine, Mayan. We know you love that small restaurant. Your eyes filled with giant tears again. So many great memories. You flicked a tear before it got the chance to fall on your cheek. What, like that time you tricked me and said you guys got a new special and it was really just to get me out of my house so you could destroy it? Naruto exclaimed. Sakura sighed and hit him on the head. Your house was a mess, and it was driving us all nuts. All we did was do some light cleaning. Really, you ought to thank us, Naruto. Naruto cried rivers. So mean, he whimpered out. You covered your mouth and laughed at your friends. You made a note to remember this moment. You wanted to be able to recall it, just like that morning. Ah, shoot. Kiba face-palmed. What's wrong? You frowned. It's Akamaru. He ran off again. Your frown deepened as you noticed the absence of the small puppy you always saw Kiba with. Has he been doing that often? Sakura asked. Just recently. I don't know what's gotten into him this past few days. Don't worry, we'll help you look for him, Naruto offered. I'll help too. Hinata smiled. You knew she was close to Kiba as well, and a part of you got annoyed at the idea of your friend. I'll look with you, you promptly stated. Kiba smiled at your group of friends, and when his smile reached your eyes, your stomach fluttered with an unfamiliar sensation. Thanks, everyone. Your friends paired off into groups of two. You went with Kiba because you, oddly, didn't want to go with anyone else. You assumed it was because you were closer to Kiba than you were to any of your other friends. Where do you usually find him when he runs off? You asked, but kept your focus on the surrounding area. Kiba thought for a moment. Down by the river a few times, and your old ramen shop. Then let's start there. Okay, the ramen shop is just a few blocks away, so let's go there first. A few footfalls later gave you nothing. Akamaru was not in the vicinity. You sighed. Let's try the river. Kiba nodded and followed you as you took off. When your eyes caught the shine of the water and the reflection of the moon hitting the water, you knew you had found the river. You didn't hear the barking, but you wanted to make sure, and thank the Hokage you did, because there was Akamaru sleeping in the middle of the river on a large rock. Kiba sighed in relief. I'm sorry for dragging you all the way out here because of him, but thanks. His smile warmed your heart. You had no idea what was going on inside your stomach, but it felt like you were fighting 1,000 ninjas all at once. You gave an awkward smile. Don't be. Besides, we're friends, aren't we? It was silent for a moment, but Kiba didn't reply. You opened your eyes and looked at him. He wore a sad expression, but he was weirdly smiling. It was a sad smile, the one he had that morning. although something about it seemed slightly different somehow, and yet all the same. Kiba? About that. He finally looked up. It startled you, but it also frightened you when he began walking toward you. Granted, it was only like 3 steps, but it was enough to make you clench your jaw. I wonder, truly, YN, is that all you see me as? He closed his eyes and leaned in, your lips inches away. You semi-braced yourself and semi-waited for it, but it never came. Kiba opened his eyes and backed away. I'm sorry, I don't know why I did that. He rubbed his neck, laughing awkwardly. When he looked at you again, all he could see was your mouth. Your eyes were covered by your hair because of the way you angled your head toward the ground. YN? You didn't say anything, but as he spoke, I'm really sorry. You moved forward. I didn't mean to upset, and connected your lips with his. It took a few seconds before Kiba fell into place, the shock overwhelming him a little bit. The kiss broke and you looked up, watching the sky full of stars reflect in his eyes. You remember that morning when we were kids? Kiba was fighting to catch his breath and respond at the same time, but he nodded instead. That was the moment you caught my attention, and everything after that, I fell in love with you over the years. You looked down, too embarrassed to meet his eyes, so don't say it was a mistake. You felt his arms pull you in, his warm body embrace yours, and the smile that crept up his lips. Of course I remember. That was the first time I ever really noticed you. Liar, you mumbled. You didn't even look at me. He laughed. You remember that too, huh? You nodded your head against his chest, his laugh vibrating off of it. The reason I didn't look at you was that I knew I wouldn't be able to look you in the eyes. I would have given myself away if I'd done. And Naruto? What I said was the truth, but I only said it because it was you. As promised, I delivered. Okay, I'm gonna go edit this. Bye everyone, I hope you enjoyed. Also, definitely gonna start writing that Bakugo's younger brother ex Todoroki. Yes, oh, can't wait. Okay, bye everyone.